Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show, coming at you live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. My name is Mark Devlin. I'm the host, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Mary Devlin and David Griffiths. How are you both this evening?
Well, I'm doing great, thank you.
Yep, doing splendidly here also.
Okay, great. Good to hear it. Mary, what are you going to be up to talking about today?
Well, I'm going to be discussing some concerning headlines this week, and they all involve the Greens.
Oh, my God. Okay, and David, what have you got for us?
Well, today I will be looking into today's vote to attempt to repeal the Hate Crime Act.
Oh, yes. Okay, that's the most topical subject of the day. And we'll actually be talking today with Councillor Thomas Kerr, who has got quite a lot to say about the state of Glasgow. So we'll be back with that and much more in just a moment.
And of course, we have Zoomer of the week.
Yes, that's right. Okay.
Let's not forget the Zoomer. That's the best part of the show.
Okay, we'll back in a second. Right, welcome back to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist show. You won't get opinions like this anywhere else on the internet or on YouTube or wherever it is you view your social media. Our aim is a better Scotland without the toxic nationalism that's strangling Scotland's potential. And I'm here tonight with David and Mary. But first, before that, I need to tell you that we won't be here next week. Mary and I are moving. And therefore everything's going to be a big mess and we won't be able to do the show. We will be back, though, in 2 weeks on May the 1st. So let me see, where are we at?
I'm already getting votes for winning.
Right, of course.
Yes.
Of course you
winning
are.
the Zoomer. Mm-hmm.
Right, as always, a huge thanks to our friends at UK Union Voice and United Against Separation Facebook pages, where many of you are watching from tonight.
Yes, indeedy. And remember, sharing is caring. So the number one thing you can do is to like the show on YouTube, even if you don't subscribe. Hit the like button. And if you are able to subscribe, please do so to increase the reach of the show at the click of one button.
Right. Okay. And now is the ideal time for you to get your Majority t-shirt or mug or mouse mat, all available at the Majority shop. Go to our website, majority.scot, and you'll find all that stuff there. We have all very reasonable prices, and you can send a message to your friends and also, of course, to your enemies.
And as usual, I'll be managing the continuous stream of comments. So please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to put up as many on screen as I can.
Right. And a little bit of change of format. We're going to have David is going to start off talking about the hate crime bill. How's it been going, David?
Well, it's now a little over 2 weeks since the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act came into being. And since that stage, it has proved every bit as unpopular and as unworkable as practically everyone predicted. So I don't know if you saw the running total, but in the first 2 weeks, almost 9,000 complaints were made to Police Scotland under the new Act. Interestingly, I saw a statistic yesterday to say that 300 of these were vexatious, which presumably means 8,700 have had to be investigated. So
wow. Yeah, I was thinking about that because it wasn't Humza Yousaf saying that, it was the far right were given tons of vexatious reports, right? But if it's only 300 were vexatious, then that kind of puts an end to that.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's just the farce we all thought it would be. So, of course, according to the legislation itself, every complaint will be investigated, right? Yeah, okay. Which inevitably impacts the ability of Police Scotland officers and detectives to investigate proper crimes, real crimes, and they're stretched already, as we all know. And again, this is not news to anyone. The Scottish Police Federation had previously warned that the Act would devastate the police's relationship with the Scottish public, which sounds about right, to be honest. It's been widely criticised by opposition parties in Scotland, which is kind of leading up to what we're going to talk about here. Yesterday, the Conservatives' Russell Finlay said, "The disastrous hate crime law has caused utter chaos since its introduction." Labour's Pauline McNeill called the implementation of the bill a disaster from start to finish. 2 weeks on, the public are none the wiser over what this bill means. And of course, we've seen Murdo Fraser trying and failing to obtain an explanation for a tweet of his being registered as a non-crime hate incident and going onto a list as a result. Whereas police officers have been given a script to recite to anyone who complains about the First Minister's infamous white rant. So apparently that's not to be treated as a non-crime hate incident.
Well, wait a minute, the secret police have a script to deal with complaints against Kim Jong-un and will keep you on a secret list that you have no access to and can be used against you anytime. Or maybe I just got some parts of that wrong there. It's Police Scotland have a script that they use to defend the dear leader, or Humza Yousaf, as he's known, and will put you in a secret list and will use it against you anytime they like. Was that more like it, David?
I would say that is pretty much exactly it, indeed, yeah. And I mean, as you say...
What does the script say, David? Does anyone know what's on the text?
Humza is great. We heart Humza.
I did see some of the wording, and it was something to the effect that he was making a point and about the makeup of people in Scotland in big jobs. He wasn't decrying them. He wasn't saying it was wrong, and it wasn't in itself. What he said was not in itself in any way based on hate, and also that it was taken out of context.
Well, it's not taken out of context. We all know it wasn't taken out of context. It's pretty clear. We saw the video.
Indeed.
It's straight there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I mean, come on, really.
Quite. So I mean, everyone's.
That's always the excuse, though, isn't it? Oh, it was out of context.
Exactly. Yeah. You've got to
the whole thing
contextualize
from start to finish.
Actually, I saw a thing that was saying that even on the official record, they changed it to putting the word "is" in. Did you see that?
That's
Scotland,
right. Yes.
You know, this judge is white, or
exactly.
these people are white, but that's not. That doesn't get the vehemence. I don't know, is that the right word?
Yes.
Out.
Yes. The
vehemence. Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Out of it. It was quite something, really.
Oh yeah, indeed. He spat the words out. It was. He would name a job title and then say "white" with absolute derision and disgust. That's how he said it. There was no question of the chief constable is white. It wasn't like that at all. Nothing of the sort. So yeah, it was clearly born out of his frustration and his disapproval of the fact that all of these people in a country which is 96% white happen to be white-skinned. And as I've said before, if you're talking about somebody's job in the context of the colour of their skin, that to me is racist, guys. I mean, I don't see what else it can be, to be honest.
But what about talk about Murdo Fraser? Has he been able to get any satisfaction from the Police Federation or from the Scottish Parliament?
He got a very vague letter from the police, which he tweeted. He then challenged Angela Constance on it today, and she said, "Oh no, you got a very clear explanation from the police, which I saw, and which explained the situation." It did nothing of the sort.
No.
He's quite simply saying, "Why is mine a non-crime hate incident? Why am I on some list? And why is that the First Minister not? Surely they're both incidents. Who decides what's a crime and what isn't, or what's a non-crime?
What's non-crime?
What's to be registered and who doesn't?" And he's not getting any answers at all.
Well, if you're a non-person, then you have a non-crime against
Right.
you. That's the thing. Well, we have to wonder about that kind of thing with the upcoming Chinese social, whatever it is, scores they get. You know, on one side you've got all the hate crime, non-hate crime incidents going up, overflowing, and then you find out that you try and go to Tesco's and the doors go, no, you can't get in here.
Right. Sorry, just checking your score here, sir. Sorry. So no, it's ridiculous. It's completely ludicrous. So it's just gone exactly as we anticipated. Sorry, Mary.
I was going to say there is actually, I read today that there's a Tesco's down in Bristol.
Oh yeah.
Where they have they basically got cameras at the door, and they have to agree to let you in. Nobody gets in unless they've been vetted by these cameras, and then you can get into Tesco's.
Oh, well, there we see.
So it begins.
It begins, indeed. Right, David, what else you got in this?
Well, yes, so just to go back, so all of this opposition culminated in the Scottish Conservatives calling for a vote in Holyrood in an attempt to repeal the Hate Crime Act. And I believe that's been taking place today. Mark, you've got some...
Yes, I've got the clip from, this is Maggie Chapman talking about it here.
The government cheerfully steers the country into the third tier of the index on censorship rankings for freedom of speech, while those in this chamber claim that the only important thing is that they or their pals get to freely misgender people, stir up hate, and generally make people feel unsafe. The UK
I'm just
ranks alongside.
I'm going to pause that for just a second because misgendering is not a crime under the bill. Okay, but I'll let her continue. There.
Moldova for freedom of expression, in no small part because of the government policy at UK level. It's all of a piece with a broader Tory agenda to silence opposition.
Right.
While universities in England are to be compelled to host hate speakers, Priyamvada Gopal was disinvited from a Home Office event for having the temerity to write about the failings of the British Empire. If you want to promote sexism on campus, the Tories are all for it. If you want to point out that British forces tortured Kenyans during the Mau Mau insurgency, you will be silenced. So what Conservatives are interested in is not free speech. It is the silencing of opponents and a free platform for those who want to spread the sort of speech they agree with.
It's really very much accuse your opponents of what you are guilty of. This is the Conservatives are not. How can they be? They didn't bring the motion for? They didn't bring the bill forward.
No,
they voted against it.
Yep.
Right. So how can they be to blame for it? It's ridiculous. Absolutely
because
nonsense.
we blame the Tories for everything.
Well, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a classic. There's classic projection, isn't it? Whatever you do to accuse your opponent of it, and then it somehow you can blacken him with your own deeds. But with some of this stuff she said there, leaving aside that stuff about the Mau Mau, which is an absolute disgrace that a member of a British representative of a British legislature should talk about the deeds of the British Army. For goodness sake, this is just ridiculous. But nonetheless, she said, in England, universities will be compelled to accept hate speakers. Really?
Yes.
They're going to be forced to, are they? Right, okay, fine. Who's going to force them to do that? The Tories, I guess. What a load of absolute rubbish. But that's Chapman for you, just typical Chapman tactics. I don't know how anybody could ever consider her worthy of a place in any representative body. Really, she talks utter dreck every time she speaks. Yes. Really bizarre. But
is everyone aware of what the Mau Mau uprising was?
It was one of the Kenyan country where I guess an indigenous tribe of people, much like the Zulus, fought for independence. And there were some atrocities on both sides, as I remember it. So in war, you do get terrible things happening.
It's not just that; it's cherry picking stuff from history just to denigrate the UK, a country, of course, which she has come to live in and take all the benefits of.
Exactly, as a Zimbabwean or Rhodesian, should we say? Yeah. So the fact that this person from that particular country, with its appalling record of human rights on both sides, is coming here lecturing Scots. My God. That takes
Timza Yousaf coming from Pakistan and telling.
Well, he doesn't. He's Scottish family came from there, so
Pakistan.
let's make that clear.
Well, that's a background, a family background.
Yes. Well, certainly there's an issue with the father coming to the UK, taking his benefits, and then trying to break it up.
Yes.
And there's an issue, of course, with Humza Yousaf of himself being a Scot to doing that nonetheless.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the same thing. So
it's not quite. Indeed, you're right. Yes, it's true. But so with all of this going on, you would wonder, surely there's a head of steam up to get this law scrapped. So let's just look at the vote briefly, guys. Will it succeed? Unfortunately, people, it hasn't got a chance.
No, it's gone. It's already. I think they voted on it already, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they have. I haven't been online for a short while, but yeah, I'm sure they will have done. It will have been voted out, or it will be without any question. The reason being, writing in the Daily Record today, Anas Sarwar made it clear that he will be calling for changes to the law rather than for its repeal. And he wrote and said, talking about the law itself, he stressed the importance of having laws to protect against what he called a rising tide of prejudice. Right. I wasn't sure there was a rising tide of prejudice in this case, but okay. And he went on to say it's the SNP's catastrophic incompetence in implementation of the Hate Crime Act that has weakened the cause of social justice in Scotland. And in a crucial passage, he said, I have been the victim of and have witnessed hate crime myself. So clearly he's not going to vote against it. So we did, however, bemoan the exclusion of sex as an aggregating factor, and he accused the SNP of failing the women of Scotland, which I know will start another little discussion. Right
Yes,
now.
I mean, I saw this,
Yep.
this whole thing, this discussion of misogyny that was going on here. J.K. Rowling basically saying, up in arms against this bill that they're supposed to be bringing to deal with misogynistic hate crimes, which apparently is going to include trans women as well.
Yep.
And I think, now I've had some feedback regarding this issue from a viewer, and it was concerned that addressing these issues, whether it's from J.K. Rowling or ourselves or anyone actually, is transphobic. And while I will give a longer response to that person offline, I think a distinction has to be made that it's not phobic to push back against any kind of activism. It's part of the debate. Many women are upset about males being given access to female spaces and in sport and access to sports, females-only sports, and so on. And that isn't phobic anything. That's just, I think actually many people would think that that's wrong, and I think it's actually misogynistic for men to try and claim places in women's sports. And if you speak up against it, you should be labelled as something that you're phobic or you're misogynistic or you're something like that. So I think we have to have an honest debate about this. If you start calling people's names, it'd be better to say, look, okay, this is you have concerns. Not to say you're just a phobe against something. You have valid concerns. It's to try and diminish and demean people, and it's not about hating other people. It's like, no, I don't hate you. I just don't want you in here, right? Because this is my space. That's the thing about it. It's not about hate. And I think that so much of this debate is driven by this idea that other people hate you, and when you're just trying to have a reasoned discussion with them.
Absolutely right. I mean, if you read some of the most criticised commentators on what is termed the anti-trans side, you're talking about people like Sharon Davis, the swimmer. Sharon Davis doesn't hate anybody in that context at all. All she's saying is, I was a successful female swimmer. I couldn't be a successful female swimmer now if I was competing against trans women. In other words, biological males who have far more stamina, far more muscle than I do. I couldn't do it. It's impossible. So why are we not allowing young women today the same opportunities I had? There's no hatred in that at all. There's no phobia in that. It's just making a comment and drawing a parallel, and I don't see any problem with that at all. And if you look at today, of course, the most vehement critic of all, or the person who appears as the bête noire of the whole trans lobby, is of course J.K. Rowling. And as she said today, that Hamza has said the separate Misogyny Act, which he's promising, will apply and will cover also trans, as well as he termed them, cis women. That's what the Fourth Minister of Scotland said. He used that term, cis women, right? Now, is that misogynistic, using that awful phrase? And he showed his true level when he trotted out that really disgraced phrase. But as Rowling said, if you are somebody who claims that someone who is incapable of being treated by a gynecologist, in other words, someone who doesn't have a female body, doesn't have a uterus, if you maintain that person can nonetheless be a victim of misogyny, then you are yourself guilty of misogyny, because you are denigrating women. Now, this is why so many people who are seemingly obsessed with trans rights are widely seen as being anti-women. That's the whole thing about the debate in outside Holyrood, which some of us attended, when you've got the women won't wish guys who are primarily women, mainly gay women.
You misgender them there.
Quite sorry, I made that. And then of course you had these trans women here who are screaming witch and all that stuff.
Yeah, but I think it's also important to realise that activists are not the population necessarily, and there's a push for. I think many people might think, well, that these activists who are up in people's faces and all that are representative of the wider trans community. And I don't think they are. I mean, I know trans people, and many, they're just ordinary people. They have nutters, some nutters, and a lot of decent people in the main. That's it. That's how it is, like any community. And so I don't see that. And I think that to some extent this activism is not helping. It's not really helping the situation. Certainly, the extremism isn't helping the situation. Now, to go back to the vote today. Now, they lost the vote, but Labour voted with the SNP. What do you think of that, David?
Well, I think it's entirely predictable, to be honest with you, because based on what Sarwar had said and what Polly McNeill had said as well, they're clearly seeing this. Labour is clearly seeing this as an act which requires refinement rather than scrap. That's how they see it. In any event, really, the point I wanted to raise here was the vote was always going to fail. Even if Labour had voted with it, it would have failed. But Labour in Scotland, remember, they don't want to be seen to be backing anything that's a Tory initiative. They just won't do that. And this is the triangulation I always talk about. This is what people have to understand. You are not dealing with a binary issue in Scotland here. It's him against him against him. It's like the shootout at the end of The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, three of them. You don't know who's really
right.
That's what it's like. But in any event, we knew that the SNP and Greens would vote as one on this issue, as they did yesterday to defeat Megan Gallagher's motion for a Scottish Government statement on the Cass report, which called for an end to the use of puberty blockers in Scotland, rightly so. And as a reminder of the arithmetic, of course, it was 61 for 53 against. And that's because there are 64 SNP MSPs and 8 Greens, not including the PO, presiding officer. So that leaves, 71 against at the maximum of 57 on the other side. So it's never really going to work, unfortunately. And even with unanimous opposition, there wouldn't be enough votes. But to be honest, what you have to see, talking about context here, a lot of the reason why the Conservatives brought this motion today, a big part of that reason is to, if you like, embarrass Labour. Now the Conservatives, they see Labour voted with the SNP. Only the Conservatives can be trusted to take the SNP on and to fight them on these.
Yeah, sure.
That's
at the same point, and the other side of it, it's the Golden Bridge strategy we talked about many times, whereas Labour can say to SNP people, well, you just come over here.
That's right.
Exactly. Basically the only thing that separates us is this issue of independence, and you're not going to get that anyway.
Yep.
So...
Indeed. Yeah. So this is the thing. It's very easy for people to say, I'm never voting Labour. They voted for the GRR, but they voted for the I couldn't possibly vote for them. And I always make the point, well, that's fine. But if you don't, and we'll come on to what that means in terms of votes, but remember, Labour has got to position themselves as Mark said, maybe an alternative to those voters who are currently voting SNP, who will never vote Conservative, but they've got to have a reason to vote Labour. And so Labour, the way Scottish Labour sees it is, well, we can't possibly be seen to be on the same side of the Tories, or we want to attract those people. And that's it, exactly. Yeah. So while it's frustrating to most people who are anti these crazy laws, it's annoying to see Scotland's opposition parties not united against them. It's also pretty much inevitable. And bear in mind, guys, we'll see tomorrow. We know we will. We'll see tomorrow people saying, right, that's it. Labour's just SNP. I'm never voting them. They back SNP legislation. I'm never voting them. That's it. That's their chance gone.
Yes.
Remember, as I posted yesterday, you look at the number of combined SNP and Labour MPs in every Westminster election in Scotland since the 50s. It's never been fewer than 42, and sometimes it's been as much as 62. People in Scotland for the last 69 years have voted either Labour or SNP in the majority. And if you combine the two, it's about 60, 70, as much as 80% of the vote. You can't just pretend that that's not happening. It's no point just thinking, oh, one more heave and the Conservatives will go over the line. No, they won't.
No, that's not going to, especially the state of the Conservative Party at the moment. Now, in 20 years from now, or 15 years from now, or 10 years, whatever, it might be a different matter entirely, but this is not the time. I mean, we see this, that people say, I'm not going to, tactically vote because of whatever. And I'll just say it again, I said it last week, it doesn't matter if you think Labour or Tories don't deserve your vote. That's not actually important. What's important is to beat the SNP. Get them out of power, destroy the SNP, and once nationalism is out the way, then we'll go back to two-party politics, maybe with the Lib Dems in there, and we can, that's normal, and we'll not be held hostage to an ideology and parties that are only obsessed with one thing and will hijack the country for that. So we need to. And I think there's another part of it as well, which is if you do vote for a party you're not normally vote for, you do have a say, right? So let's say you voted Labour and you didn't normally say, I'm a Conservative, I'd never vote for Labour, but you end up voting for Labour as a tactical vote. Well, then you can say to them, look, I voted for you.
Yeah.
Your vote, my vote is just as important as this guy who's down here.
Exactly.
Right, as well, and this one over here. So Matt, I've got a voice as well. Don't let these, people back into this thing. Don't make coalitions. Don't do stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think and reject extremism, right? Because that's the reason I did the tactical vote, was to reject extremism. So you want to. No point in doing that and then letting extremists in the party you voted for then prosper after that.
Right. Indeed. So all I would say to people as a final little comment here is, yes, it's very tempting to say, Labour, they sicken me, I'm never going to vote for them. Please don't do this. All we're doing there is falling for fundamentally what is a Conservative trap to dissuade people from voting Labour. And that's what happens in election years. Politics is a dirty business, remember?
Yeah, of course it is. But yes, I mean, even I saw Rita's comment there. It's like, I know, of course it's hard. The reason it has to be hard.
Yep.
To do it, right? That's the thing. It is hard. So, but you've got to say, look, there was a bigger purpose here at play. There's a bigger thing at play. If we can get rid of the SNP, then we're really moving along.
Exactly.
We've still got a long way to go after that, nonetheless. But from there, right? Great segment there. Thanks for handling that, David. Right. Okay. So, coming up, we're going to have a chat with Thomas Kerr, who is a councillor for Glasgow, about the state of Glasgow. So we'll be back in a second with him. Right, okay, let's bring Thomas on here. And hi, Thomas, how are you doing there?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, we're doing great, thank you.
Hello, Thomas, nice to meet you.
Right,
You too.
Have you been watching the show so far?
I've been watching a little bit anyway. I've been trying to catch up on my phone as well, what's been going on in Holyrood. So.
Right, oh, that's true, yeah, so about the vote. Any thoughts? Well, first of all, let's introduce yourself and then you can tell us your thoughts on what happened today. So, just to how did you get involved in politics?
It's a long story, Mark. We could be here for all day. No, I got involved in politics because I'm fundamentally from the East End of Glasgow, working class guy who grew up in the East End of Glasgow. Both my parents had addiction issues when I was growing up.
Okay.
And I've seen a lot of kids from my sort of background who, didn't think that they could make anything of their life and anything else. And I got involved in politics because I wanted to try and change that whole atmosphere. I was initially involved with the Labour Party, which many people know anyway. And I met a couple of people who were involved with the Labour Party and thought this party does not represent working class people whatsoever. So I made the switch to the Conservatives back in 2011. And I've been involved with since then. And then I was elected in 2017 as a surprise. I was the Shettleston Tory that nobody was expecting to win. And I've been stuck in the city chambers ever since. I seem to kind of get out of it. So
right, yes. And is that like we just talked about this earlier actually, and is that like a prison for you?
Yeah, it's frustrating. I think is probably the best words to put it. The building itself is beautiful. The city is amazing to represent. However, the people that are in it are so detached from reality, it's utterly unbelievable. I mean, I sit in committees most of the time with my hands in my head thinking, what on earth are we discussing? The city is falling apart. Place is an absolute tip. And we're discussing things like loaning a painting to the Vatican or the Glasgow's allotment strategy. All fantastic things, but is it really the most pressing issue when we have taxi drivers that can't do their jobs, or when we've got potholes and businesses don't feel as if anybody's... I just think the place is utterly detached from reality.
Right. Okay. We'll take a wee break there. We'll just go back though to the hate crime thing. What are your thoughts on what happened to that today in Holyrood?
I think I picked up the last bit of the conversation that you were having just before I came on. I think, as David said, it was a bit predictable as to how things were going to go because of just sadly how politics is at the moment. I must admit, though, I'm more angry with Labour than what I thought I would have been, because I get David's argument of it looks like a Conservative trap. It's not. Honestly, to God, it's not. It's basically us trying to make sure that the party in the Parliament is showing people, and David's right, it was always going to fail because of how the SNP and the Greens are lined up. That's just how politics works in Holyrood. Yeah. But sometimes you need to put principle above party politics. Labour could have done that today and they didn't. Now, I'll give you an example because I know that in Holyrood it's very easy. Hate crime bill, GRR, all these other issues where Anna Sarwar has backed up the SNP. But when you come here locally in Glasgow, the low emission zone, for example, Labour completely backed the SNP and the Greens in bringing in the low emission zone, which has absolutely been disastrous for the city. There is a number of policies as well in this city locally that Labour absolutely do not stand up for people in this city. So I think it's easy to say, we need to tactically vote Labour to make sure we get rid of the SNP. I'm not totally against that idea. I just think we need to be a bit more careful and making sure that Labour don't just become the SNP. You don't beat the SNP by simply becoming them. We need to.
I think it's a reasonable point.
I think a lot of people are concerned about that.
No
Yes.
doubt. Yep.
And the last thing I'll say, just on the tactical voting point, is if we were to go with tactical voting, I wouldn't be sitting here in Glasgow City Council.
Right.
People voted and took a chance on me in 2017. And I'm very grateful for that. They then took a chance on me in 2022 again. It's the reason why we have somebody in here who's willing to challenge the status quo inside the City Chambers. If I wasn't here, if we were just to tactically vote Labour, we would have a bunch of Labour councillors in here who are utterly signed up to the SNP Green agenda. That's the bigger worry here. So I completely get the point. This general election, we need to be very, very careful on how we vote because we want to get rid of the SNP. But we need to think longer term here, how we try and make sure that Labour's there, but that we have people there who are sensible and make sure that they come to the sensible.
Well, finding sensible people in Glasgow, that's a big challenge, and it's
especially elected people. Yeah.
Okay, so we were driving through Southside last Thursday, and a pothole that was as wide as the lane nearly took the front off our car.
Yeah.
And I'm not joking. I mean, really, West Street, I think.
It was on a major heavily busy road, so there must be thousands going over that every day.
And the thing that really struck me about driving through, apart from the potholes and the construction barriers all across the road and the trash and the rubbish and all that, that's bad enough. But the thing that really caught my eye was that the barriers, pedestrian barriers at the side of the roads, all mangled and that to me is like, okay, rubbish might have blown from somewhere, or construction. All right, maybe the construction will be finished, but these pedestrian barriers at the side of the road, surely they are they're the council's responsibility, and why are they all mangled and falling apart? And I just felt after that, it was a very poor impression of just driving through the city and just a general, and it wasn't even raining or anything. It was actually a rare moment when the sun was out, so it wasn't anything to do with that. So I mean, do you feel from inside that there's just not the care being taken in the city?
Yeah, the reality is the majority of councils in here aren't interested. The majority of the councils in here do not live in the real world whatsoever. So to them, somebody moaning about potholes, that's just part of our jobs. So you just deal with that sort of thing. They don't care about the state of the city, and they also put their fingers in their ears to pretend it doesn't happen. I am gobsmacked every single time Susan Aitken says the city looks great or it just needs a wee spruce up, because she must walk in completely different streets with the majority of Glaswegians. Because all you have to do, you were speaking about the south side there, but if you come to the city centre is an absolute disaster. Me and my partner were in Irvine a couple of weeks ago for just an overnight, came back up through Central Station. As soon as you walk out, you're dealt with graffiti, you're dealt with fly tipping, you're dealt with litter, you're dealt with drug dealing, all at the very front as soon as you come out of Central Station. This is a complete deterioration in Glasgow, and they're just not interested in sorting it out. Instead, they'd rather use smears and call people, far right and attack your opponents and all this sort of stuff and blame everybody else, when the reality is Susan Aitken's been, I think, one of the longest serving leaders of Glasgow City Council. She takes absolutely no responsibility for any sort of decision that she's made. And we've seen cut after cut after cut at cleansing. It's now going into education in the council. And it's hammering our city to the point where I just don't even know how we try and recover it properly.
Well, it must be bad if you're saying that Irvine is better than Glasgow.
I was thinking that.
I come from Irvine, so I'm allowed to say that.
Irvine was lovely.
Okay, Mary.
Of course it is. I was going to ask, it seems like the priority seems to be like bike lanes.
Yeah.
And, I live in an area where all these new bike lanes have put in. What used to be a 2-lane road has been narrowed to a 1-lane road. So the traffic's going at half the speed. And the bike lanes, of course, are completely empty. Yeah. And that seems to be the thing that, that people are saying about the councillors. It's like, why are they focusing on bike lanes when there are much bigger priorities? Is that happening in Glasgow? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, big time. The biggest issue we have, and the most frustrating thing from being an elected member in this council anyway at the moment, is a lot of the SNP councillors in particular actually understand. So when you speak to them privately, they actually get the fact that a lot of the cycle lanes aren't used, a lot of the issues that are going on. But the biggest problem we are facing is we've got 11 Greens now in the council who essentially run the show. So 11.
Oh, 11 Greens.
Okay.
11 Greens altogether. I know it's a terrifying prospect, but there's 11 in the
Right, okay.
They try having this draw, tell you. But honestly, they are completely beholden to the 11 Greens, the SNP now, and Labour in particular as well. So they are voting through all this stuff without proper consultation, without talking to local communities. They bring it all in. Now, I'm not against cycle infrastructure at all. Where it works, absolutely. But I'll give you an example. There's one in my ward at London Road, right outside Celtic Park. Goes right along Park.
Yes, that's the one you talk about. Yes.
I can tell you right now, I think I can count in one hand the amount of people have ever seen that.
Oh, no, I mentioned it last week. I said it's the exact same thing.
The East End of Glasgow is not well known for being a cycle capital of Scotland, put it that way.
Right.
Yes. But these bike lanes do work in places like the West End, absolutely. But you need to have a proper consultation with local residents about it. The council just don't do that. Instead, it's these 11 Greens who are basically running.
But that isn't that money coming kind of from, isn't it, ring fenced from the central government, so that basically when even Susan Aitken complained about it, right? That the money that comes to Glasgow or any local authority already has big chunks of it allocated for stuff like green priorities. Have you seen that?
That's the biggest issue we face in terms of our budget every year is the ring fencing alongside the cuts. So what happens is the Scottish Government gets more money from the UK Government, for example. They then decide to chip away at it, to put it on whatever, talking point they want for this week, a council tax freeze or baby boxes or whatever it is that the SNP want to try and toss at this time. So that cut then has to come to local councils. And as you say, Mark, it's then ring fenced entirely when it comes down to the council. So the priority has already been told, and if you dare to challenge the government on that, they'll just take the funding away. So a lot of our money is already ring fenced. The other problem we have with the cycle infrastructure is that a lot of private investment is used from them. So Sustrans, for example, comes in with a lot of money, and the council's never going to say no to money. So we take it, but we then have these building infrastructure to build cycle lanes. We're then the ones left to maintain it. So the cycle lanes are either too small to let people in, and then you can't get people in to try and clear it up. So when you've got debris and everything else on it, we can't get.
That's Mary's point, I think.
Thomas, tell me about this obsession with 20 mile per hour speed limits. Is that all part of the low emission zone obsession?
Partly, it's more to do with the fact that, as I said, the Greens are just after nut and like to hand out stuff.
We say that every week.
In fact, we've got a whole section coming on about that after this one.
I'll give you an example. We had a motion at full council last year to reduce the speed limit on the M8 to 30 mile an hour. And I remember making the point saying
they want to turn it into a boulevard, apparently.
Yeah, a boulevard to Edinburgh, but a broken boulevard. But what I kept saying was 30 mile an hour. You've obviously never came across the Kingston Bridge, because 30 mile an hour would be a massive improvement.
Yes, some people say that. That's true, but some people.
David, the biggest issue is particularly.
So go ahead. Sorry, there was a glitch there.
No, I completely agree. And just on the low emission zone issue, it's been one of the biggest issues that the city's faced, because we've lost nearly 400 taxi drivers from our roads in the city. So we're trying to recover from the pandemic, particularly in the city centre. And one of the roles I hold is Vice Convener of the Licensing Board. It's a non-partisan role. I try to work hard as much as I can do for the city. Most people who know me know that I always try to put my constituents in the city before I do politics. So I always try my hardest to do that. But the low emission zone is completely, just hit the city massively. People are now no longer coming into the city centre because they can't drive in. And
we can't do it. We don't go in anymore.
So people just refuse to come in, and it's that added on effect. I always use the city centre as kind of like the heart of the body. If it's not pumping right, the rest of the city then starts to deteriorate. Sure. And that's the biggest issue we're facing.
Thomas, I wanted to ask, did you actually do any follow-up assessments about like the LEZ? It's been in for more than a year now. Do they actually measure like how businesses are doing in the city after something like that?
So that's two very different things if you ask the council. So they should, is the honest answer, Mary, but they don't. So they evaluate how the low emission zone has been implemented and the air quality. They are not interested in speaking to business or hospitality at all. That would be the biggest issue that if I was council leader, the biggest issue with the low emission zone in particular is the hospitality trade, which has been hammered alongside the business community, but they're not interested in speaking to them whatsoever. So their impact assessment will be on air quality and how it's impacting air quality rather than how it's actually impacting the city centre, because that will give them answers they don't want to hear, quite frankly.
Do they do anything asking businesses in the city centre how they're doing or how things could be better?
Well, from the businesses in the hospitality trade I speak to, absolutely not. There is no engagement. I mean, I'll give you an example. I attended a public meeting, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Together UK had organised it, and it was a thing about low emissions in the neighbourhoods and things. I had spoke to Mark. All 85 Glasgow councillors were invited to that event. I was the only one who turned up.
Yeah, he said that. Yeah.
That gives you the example of just how detached and how uninterested the majority of these councils are. They're just simply not interested in finding out. And they'll give platitudes to the business community. I mean, the main opposition group in here, the Labour Party, will give platitudes. They'll speak a good game when it comes to speak to the business community, absolutely. But they then vote for the low emission zone. They then vote for these policies that aren't helping. They're then voting against development. They're then voting against the business community. So they've kind of became grappled with this idea of they need to present a good opinion to the Greens as well. And that's the biggest frustration I have in Glasgow, because so many of the councillors, SNP and Labour, understand how bad the city is in the state that it's in, but they're too scared to challenge the party leaders and they're too scared to challenge the Greens. And it's the city that's losing out.
It's a terrible situation, but what can be done? What do you think can be done? Can the people do anything? Really?
Well, I think the main thing is we're seeing a change, and I'll be upfront about that. The 2022 council elections were difficult for my party because of national issues rather than what we were doing locally. People like you and Blockley and things who were great councillors lost their seats because of national issues rather than anything to do locally. But there's been a complete change in attitudes when you're speaking to people on the doors. They're sick, fed up. They're just so angry with how the city has been run. And that will result in a sort of change coming. The main point that I want to try and get across is Labour will likely be the next administration in Glasgow. That's probably a given, depending on how politics is going. What they need, though, is a good group of Conservatives and maybe even independents in here who are elected to hold them accountable. Because if there's not enough Tories in here, what will happen, and I can tell you this for sure, is that Labour will continue with the policies of Susan Aitken, because the Greens will still be beholden to us to give them the
Greens are wagging the tail of the administration all around.
And that's my job over the next couple of years as group leader in here. We're a smaller group, much smaller group than we were, but we still speak for a huge number of Glaswegians, particularly in working class areas, and it's my job to make sure that those people feel comfortable enough to learn how to use the STV system, to make sure we can lock the SNP out of the city chambers, but make sure that you have strong Conservatives in here who will hold the administration accountable as well, because that's the only way we're going to get out of this mess.
Here's a nice message here for you, Thomas. What a treat to listen to an honest councillor. More power to you.
I'll happily take that.
Right. Okay, so thank you very much for coming on the show. You said that you did watch the show. You won't be with us for the Zoomer section. Any idea who's your nomination?
I was thinking, after our conversation earlier on, Mark, I was thinking about this, and there's a number of people I'd love to nominate for Zoomer of the week or Zoomer of the 7 years, which is Susan Aitken. But to be honest with you, my win has to be the now Siobhan Brown, the Minister in charge of public safety. In the past couple of hours, she had an absolute car crash in Holyrood where she stood up and said, I'm going to challenge the misinformation that the Conservatives have been spouting about this hate crime bill. She was then challenged as to what is the misinformation. She said, well, I'm reading from my speech. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yes, that is definitely a good one.
7 years of failure for Susan Aitken. Siobhan Brown is better within a 5-minute answer. So well done, Siobhan.
Right. Well, it's a pleasure to have had you on the show, and we will hope to have you again.
Please
on
come back,
sooner
Thomas.
rather than later.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Great. Okay, so take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Right, well, that was very nice to talk
good,
to
wasn't it?
Thomas there, and I think a good reaction from the people there. Next up, hopefully it can get Glasgow in a better state. It really is a bit of a dump. But I often think that the councillors, of course it's the same, isn't it? They just care about themselves. They don't care about the city at all, or their pet projects, which are nothing to do with the city. And it really does need a
kick up the arse. That's what it needs, Mark.
Yes, basically that's it. Right, we're going to be back in a second. We're going to be talking about those horrible Greens again, and so see you in a moment. Right, okay, that went quicker than expected. Sorry, first of all, to do the nation message. It takes a lot of work to organise the show, or social media, and all the various feeds that we do. We simply wouldn't be able to do that without the help of our donors. Many of you who watch the show tonight are donors. If you would like to donate to keep us going, please do so. You can go to our website. There's a donation button at the side of every page. Or you can do if you're on YouTube, you can do a super thanks or a super sticker. And if we do see it in the chat, if we try and catch it, then we will give you a shout out as well. Though we can't always find those as well. Mary, again, say there.
I was just going to say that anything large or small is very much appreciated. And you can please just go to the website. You can make a donation there. Thank you.
Right, great. Okay, so let's talk about the Greens. It emerged this week that the Greens and the SNP are fighting with each other. Oh no, trouble in paradise. Taking time out from his dual role as hate speech finder general, in a rare moment, Humza Yousaf said that it's something that we even agree with, is that a vote for the Greens is a wasted vote. And then Patrick Harvey, taking his time out from his job as garden gnome, said the Greens aren't interested in an electoral pact with the SNP. So, and then Ross Greer said there isn't time to waste in voting for parties who are unwilling to take bold climate action. And I was like, what are these Greens actually interested in the environment? I'm not so sure about that. Anyway, in the least astonishing news ever to come out of people who would do anything for power, Lorna Slater said the Greens are open to a conversation supporting Labour at Holyrood.
What?
Yes. And independence wouldn't be a red line.
Right.
Opportunists, aren't they?
As Groucho Marx said, these are my principles, and if you don't like them, I have others. David, should Labour have a conversation with the toxic Scottish Greens?
Well, there's a nice, easy question, and the answer is categorically not, because quite simply, the Greens are electoral kryptonite. They are just wasters of votes. Their ideas, as we know, are no better formed than those discussed in a sixth form debating club. They're not harmless cranks. They are extremely dangerous extremists. Labour should have precisely nothing to do with them, nothing at all in Scotland. And if Labour does, if Starmer does even consider it, he will pay a heavy price if he even entertains talking to these fools, would be my prediction. So it's a big no from me.
Well, we saw just there what Thomas is saying. They seem to have infiltrated into all aspects of society.
Yeah.
I mean, we think that, this is one of the reasons I'm against proportional representation. It gives these small parties an outsized influence, and especially when they hold the balance of power, which they seem to do in many situations. We see that, of course, in the Scottish Parliament itself,
yes,
that they hold the balance of power with the SNP. Therefore, all the policies that are coming through are the Green policies, and and perhaps also in Glasgow city centre, and perhaps in other councils around the country. It seems quite insidious, I think. What do you think, David?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the problem with proportional representation, as you say, it is intended to get very small parties, extremely small parties with token representation. What it's not designed to do is to get, frankly, a bunch of people who are masquerading as Greens, although they are in reality nationalists, just to get more people elected. And I've been through the arithmetic of this many times. It's something like 27 times more easy to get a Green MSP elected via the list when the SNP does well in constituencies than it is to get an SNP MSP elected by the list. That's why it happens and I'm not sure if I'm being slanderous there, but it's true. So yeah, that's why they do it fundamentally, because they are, to all intents and purposes, nationalists rather than Greens, as we've said. Do they really have any interest in equality?
Well, they're just interested in power, whatever. That's the issue with the Greens, or to grab onto any global movement.
Indeed. Yeah,
the rats are leaving the sinking ship, aren't they?
Yes, or the climate, or whatever it is. Just something, religion. It's very religious. Feels like a religion to me. Anyway, I was actually in this article where there's this warring. What's this article here? It was in the Herald. Warring SNP and Greens will tear the Yes movement to bits. This is by Neil. I'm not a nationalist. Honest Mackay. Now he's got history with us because of these kind of nonsense that he continuously goes on about how he's not a nationalist. But
we think it's like protesters too much.
Jerry Hassan is the same kind of thing. I'm not a nationalist. I just supported them for years and write articles all about them. So, an example. He ends that article with, the real cruelty here is that political failure means collateral damage. The Yes movement will be left high and dry. It will be rudderless and lost. Oh God, my tears are almost coming out. And all because of pro-independence politicians. The same ones that he voted for.
He's been promoting them for years.
Right.
Absolutely nuts. Now, Mary, you've got some more. Continuing? There's more going on with these Greens.
Do I have time, Mark?
You have a couple. Do a couple. Why not?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Do a couple.
Let me have a look. Okay. So basically, we're still talking about. Oh, where am I?
Yeah, Greens and Alba. I think you're go for.
Yes. So have you got the headlines?
Somewhere.
Okay, so I'm continuing with the grudge match between the Greens and Alba. I can't see my screen. Wait, hold on.
Okay,
There you go.
right?
Yes, I am fine.
I'll hide you a wee thing for now.
Are you
on
putting
go.
up the headline?
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go, there you
So
go.
Greens and Alba clash ahead of Believe in Scotland pro-Indy rally. So this is going to be a march and a pro-independence rally in Glasgow this Saturday, organised by Believe in Scotland. But they've told Alba that they can't come. They're not invited, as the Scottish Greens won't share a platform with them.
Well, this is just exactly what we were talking about, right?
Mm.
It's the same thing. It's like, why are these people who have barely elected exercising so much power?
I know.
Yeah.
So this is a rally. It's a festival of independence. Sounds great.
Yes.
Celebrating everything about the country we want to build and sharing our positive vision for an independent Scotland. But guys, it's not very positive that the two main parties that can't stand each other and refuse to, be seen together. But I mean, to be honest, I guess that's better for us, isn't it?
Sure.
So there's going to be speakers including Humza Yousaf and Ross Greer. It sounds like an exciting event, as well as the Hue and Cry frontman Pat Kane and Iona
wow.
hosting. So put that in your diary, guys. And don't turn up and say that you're an Alba supporter, because you won't be allowed in. But apparently, Alex Salmond and Alba were asked first to go to this, but Alex didn't get back to them in time. So then he got dumped, and Ross Greer and the Greens were invited. So pretty awkward.
Awkward.
Yep. Okay, I'll move on quickly because we don't have much time. Also, the SNP government to spend £45 million on bonkers 20-mile-an-hour speed limits.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
They're planning to spend this £45 million of taxpayer cash, of course, on implementing 20-mile-per-hour zones on thousands of roads across the country. They're saying it's going to be about 36,000 sections of road in Scotland, but you're going to have to travel at 20 miles an hour.
Didn't they learn anything from Wales? The people of Wales are up in arms about this nonsense here.
Where's the music
coming from? Indeed.
I'm getting a musical interlude here.
Is the ice cream van in your area, David?
in Ardrossan. A bit late for that, guys.
Well, this is all coming. It's part of the Butte House Agreement, and it's the Greens, again, that are behind this.
Right.
So that's why we're getting pushed with these 20-mile-an-hour zones, which are supposed to come into effect next year, 2025. But it may or may not happen because the SNP executive will have to pony up a lot of cash for the councils. That's what the £45 million for,
right?
Because they actually need to work with the local councils to implement this policy. And as you say, Mark, it's been an absolute disaster in Wales. That's where the bonkers has come from. It's caused traffic jams. It's causing difficulty for buses. Care workers can't get around. All kinds of absolute nonsense. And what for? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking it's all to do with this ridiculous idea of legislation by rhyme.
Rhyme? What do you mean?
Yeah, because the whole thing's about 20's plenty. That's what it is.
Yeah.
The 20's plenty. The whole thing is driven by that. 20's plenty, but it really, it should have actually been stay alive at 25.
Yeah, well,
right. 25 is more handy, or something 30. Well, can you get something that rhymes with 30? I should have worked this out before the show.
Yeah, I think you should have thought about that one.
Don't get hurty. Drive at 30.
That's much better.
Right, that type of thing. So this is the
Well,
problem.
maybe we should come up with a counter campaign. We'll go with your don't get hurty.
Drive
at 30.
Drive at 30. I mean, that's the whole. I'm not joking. The whole thing is driven by this idea of 20's plenty.
Oh dear.
People go, we can sell this and go 20, and then you go like, well, what about the cars? Oh, we don't care about them. We just get this message out. 20's plenty. It's
absolute nonsense. And I'll be putting out a lot of more fumes and everything.
Right, Mary, that was a great section. I know you have another wee bit, but we'll just leave that for today.
I'll basically just mention Lorna Slater completely messed up the deal for Kinloch Castle. The guy says that she's an anarchist.
Anarchist?
Yes.
Anarchy in the UK.
Jeremy Hosking, he was going to spend £10 million doing up the castle, but Lorna Slater got involved. The whole thing went to hell, as usual, as you would totally expect.
Right.
And the deal is off. The castle is in ruins and crumbling as we speak.
Oh, great.
That's it.
Right. Okay. 20 miles per hour equals more pollution. Yes, we know. That's ridiculous. Anyway, okay. Moving on.
They don't care.
Right. They don't care. Right. Okay. So where are we at on this amazing thing.
Things
here.
you can do to support the show.
Oh, that's a good bit. Do you want to do that bit?
Okay, things you can do to support the show. You can make a donation to the Majority's 2024 crowdfunder.
Yay.
You can buy a T-shirt as modelled by Mark, or a mug
Lovely.
as not modelled by Mark.
I don't have a mug.
You can subscribe to the show on YouTube, or you can tell your friends about us. You can also do all of the above, which will make us all feel very happy. Thank you.
Very happy. It doesn't
And
say
really,
that.
okay, really loved. Really loved.
Underline exclamation mark.
And who doesn't want to feel really loved?
That is it. Do all of those, and you'll be really loved. Okay, right. Coming up is the moment you've all been waiting for. It is the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the week.
Yay!
If I can find the thing. Right. Okay. So my Zoomer of the week is IndyCar guy Gordon Ross, who's a driving instructor from Glasgow who broadcasts from his car. He broadcasts independence messages from his car. IndyCar. Anyway, long-term viewers remember IndyCar guy from when he had inside information from Mike Russell about how independence would be achieved. No, it wasn't by putting more posters in a horse box, but it was the amazing idea that if Scotland won enough seats in an election, the SNP would ask for independence and it would be granted. No problem. Of course, they would get international support from the United Nations and such. Anyway, back in August 2023, from the comfort of his Ford Fiesta, he then said that after the claim of right had been invoked, all UK parties in Scotland would be made illegal and banned. Have we listened to this?
And whatever happens on the 11th and 12th of October with the Supreme Court, we are going to have a vote. And that vote will be a yes vote. And when it is a yes vote, no matter how it happens and no matter in what kind of democratic event it occurs, then our government needs to have the backbone to stand up and say, the country has voted for independence. We are no longer part of the union. We're invoking the claim of right as of now. And from henceforward, all UK parties in this parliament are illegal and banned. That is what needs to happen. And that is what I hope will happen.
Yes, okay, banning parties, #nationalism is authoritarianism. Now, you might think that over the past 2 years of disastrous front pages from the SNP, a devastating Supreme Court judgment, Nicola Sturgeon's arrest, and Humza Yousaf, that IndyCar man would have given up. But no, he's back. But this time, he is complaining that his reasonable and well thought out broadcasts are being stymied by MI5. So here we go. Yes, this is it.
Edition of IndyCar. Now, normally, as you know, I live stream my broadcast most of the time, and that is usually okay. But it's been reported to me again that not just my old Facebook channel, but also now my YouTube live streams are also being subject to sound interference from outside. Now, this is a problem which I've faced right from the start, broadcasting live anywhere actually in the city of Glasgow, and it's due to interference from the United Kingdom security services who have mobile units. I think if I remember correctly, they have 2 of these. Basically, there are vans with radio jamming equipment inside of them, and they look for anybody who's broadcasting anything which they think would undermine the union, and I guess I fall into this category.
All right, so let's get straight. He thinks the UK security services have mobile units searching through Glasgow, the airwaves, with radio jamming equipment, trying to block his awesome pro-Indy live streams. No, he's just got a bad mobile signal.
Yep.
And it's not like he goes on and it goes, oh, MI5 don't like this, and this is pish. We're not going to broadcast it. I don't think that happens. Otherwise, it would, they could be stopping us as well. But at least he upgraded his jumper from the previous time.
With everything that's going on in the world at the moment, we've just had Iran attacking Israel and everything like that. He honestly believes that MI5 are driving around Glasgow trying to, or whatever it is, trying to block his signals. It's absolutely deluded.
Yes, what does make me wonder about is how he teaches the learners. Right, Mrs. Jones, I'd like you to take the car out of neutral and forward to independence. No U-turns, no right turns.
Yeah.
Now let's drive off this cliff. Anyway, for being a chosen, the IndyCar guy gets my nomination. He's strong, Mary, strong.
I bet the wife doesn't let him in the house. I think that's why he spends so much time in his car.
It's quite something, right? I think it's going to be. Is it David? You next?
It is indeed.
Right. Okay. Well, back in a second with David. David Zoomer of the week. Right. Yeah.
This week, my nomination is the newly elected Glasgow University rector, who goes by the name of Ghassan Abu Sittah. By all accounts, Abu Sittah is a Palestinian surgeon, and he was elected as Glasgow Uni rector, taking over 80% of the votes returned, albeit in a very, very low turnout. And the reason that he's come to my attention is that in his inaugural address, he made what was a pretty extreme inflammatory speech. He quoted Hamas casualty and death figures in Gaza as gospel, as so many people do who are on the left of the particular debate. He also claimed, bizarrely, that Glasgow University, as an institution, actively colludes in the murder of innocent civilians. Right. Well, not exactly hello, good evening, and welcome, is it? Really? Anyway, way to introduce herself. But it reminded me of an election for rector of London University in about 1980 or 81, when I was just newly a student. And the candidates that time were Princess Anne, Jack Jones, the trade union guy, not the singer, and Nelson Mandela. And I thought, I would imagine Nelson Mandela will win this. No, Princess Anne won it comfortably. And I thought then, wow, I'm pretty out of touch with how students obviously think. My God, I'm about 100 times more out of touch now than I was then. But the real reason that I chose Abu Sittah as my Zoomer of the week is because he elected in his address to quote, as he put it, the immortal Bobby Sands. And he gave his quote about, how laughter of our children will be a revenge and all that nonsense. Talking of Bobby Sands, it reminded me of a quote which I felt was more apropos, and that was just after Sands was elected as an MP in the short period before he died on hunger strike, the British government was seemingly very embarrassed by this, so that's what international commentators tried to make it. And so Margaret Thatcher's then press secretary, Bernard Ingham, was asked, well, what do you think about the fact that an elected British MP is on hunger strike? And he said, well, if Mr. Sands doesn't want to eat, Mr. Sands will not be an MP for very long. And I thought, quite right. So if he'd used that in his speech, I thought that might have been struck a more correct note. But anyway, for his rabble-rousing revisionist idiocy, my Zoomer of the week is this gentleman, Gabba, whatever it is. What is his name again?
Yes.
Ghassan Abu Sittah, him, yeah. There you go.
Yeah, it makes you wonder a little bit about the students at Glasgow University that they would elect someone like that. But it's not untypical of typical student activism. And, they're just like, well, the Palestinians are great and the Jews are bad. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I think the quote should really be amended to be a revenge will be peace with all the children or something like that. There's no revenge, in fact. It's just we want peace for all the children. And it might help if we don't stop sending missiles across the barrier and so on. But anyway, for bringing this, a kind of aspect to the conflict, distorting the conflict. I think it's not good. And I noticed that the rector or the CEO or someone had to say, no, we don't really approve of what he's saying, but still they gave him a platform for it.
Exactly. Oh, it was somebody making a point here. Tommy Boy saying, and the guy subsequently went to Germany, was refused entry because he in the past has made what amount to Holocaust denial speeches. So that's the kind of caliber of person Glasgow Uni was just nominated and elected.
A topsy-turvy world, I think, to some
Most of the students at Glasgow Uni are Chinese now, though, aren't they?
It's a conspiracy.
That just might be a factor.
Well, certainly not Scottish.
Not as many as it should be anyway. All right, very good. I don't know if it's Zoomer or just very distasteful, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, Mary, you're up next. Okay.
Okay. My Zoomer of the week is Indie supporting Leslie Riddoch again.
Oh, it's a classic.
For promoting nonsense propaganda that Scotland could be as successful as Denmark or Sweden
She never shuts up about this
after
Denmark.
independence.
It's
Because, well, I'll tell you why she never shuts up in a minute. But just like between those two countries, your card would still work in Scotland and in England. I think she's talking about your credit. Your credit cards will still work. It's like, what? She doesn't seem to grasp that your card would still work in Timbuktu as well. So, I mean, really, what's her point?
Right.
Well, I think what she has very clearly demonstrated is that she has absolutely no idea of how money, currency, banking, or even the most basic of economics, how they actually work.
Well, I've got the clip here, so you want to see it?
Yes.
The famous Øresund Bridge between Denmark and Sweden, a frictionless border between two different countries with different systems, different languages, and different currencies.
Does that get in the way of cross-border trade? Not when you pay by card.
Which country are we in?
Sweden.
Yeah, just so close to Denmark and no bother. Paying here?
Yeah.
I think she needs to know what day of the week it is as well.
Do you want your receipt?
Just like that.
Wow, there you go.
Well, the reason she's doing this, because you were saying she's always going on about it, she is gallivanting around as a director of the Nordic Horizons Group, which is it's a long
money involved.
Of course there is. It's a long-running project sponsored by the Scottish government, paid for by us mugs, the taxpayers, which explores how an independent Scotland could become more like the socially liberal high-tax Nordic countries. So she's getting paid by the taxpayers to do all this, gallivanting around using her card.
I'm somewhat naive. And I actually thought she was doing it because she actually liked Denmark. Well, she might actually like Denmark, but I thought it was a homegrown initiative.
No,
she's actually paid for it.
Yeah, this is a whole load of jollies that she's on.
That's ridiculous.
Anyway, Leslie seems to have gone to the same school as wee Emma Harper. God love her. Whenever you say Emma Harper, you always have to say God love her. But Leslie... Leslie's supposed to be some kind of globe-trotting journalist, is she not? She should know better, basically, is what we're saying.
I remember she was trying to make the point, oh, look, you don't need a border, you don't need a barrier to go from one country to the other. Leslie, dear, both countries are in the EU, unlike independent Scotland will want to be, and England. That's the whole point of the fact that we would need a border if Scotland was independent and try to get into the EU. So it's just idiocy. That's all it is, frankly. It's not.
I don't understand anything.
I just don't understand how any adult could think, okay, I'm paying in one country, and I'm paying in another country, and it's just the same. I don't
because she's using her card, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's all the same.
Wait
till she gets the bill. I mean, if you were, if Scotland became independent from England, and then your Scottish pound is worth, like, say, 50 or 60% on a good day, compared to the English pound, when you use your card in England and then you get back to Scotland, and what you thought was £10 is actually going to cost you about £17 or £18. And then maybe it'll start to hit them how that works.
Hyperinflation. Anyway, right.
Well, basically, I'm just saying these documentaries are the kind of embarrassing, immature, and nonsense-drivel propaganda the indie movement is peddling these days with our money.
Oh,
I think this should be illegal. I really do.
I can't believe that it's actually paid for.
Yeah, by the taxpayers.
That's ridiculous. That's really bad.
It's worse than, what's his name, Angus, that's always off in the States all the time.
Yeah.
Wow. Right. Okay.
And this is the kind of propaganda that they're putting out, making these documentaries.
But I don't think it's really working, is it? I mean, really, who's going to? People don't know enough about Denmark. Does anyone?
Do we want to be like Denmark?
Well, Mark Blythe, the economist, said it would take 800 years for Denmark to be like Denmark, and they have all this happiness and stuff. But it's still it's not. It's like fix what we've got here.
Yes.
Not looking at what we've got, what these other people have got, because it's cherry picking. It's always cherry picking. They pick the best of this and that, and they don't talk about Denmark's, immigration laws and all this type of stuff. as well. Right. Okay. It is going to be up to David to
Oh,
decide.
up to me. Okay, in that case, right. Okay. My nomination was just really to make a point that it was a bit odious. He's not really a Zoomer.
Yes.
Leslie Reddick is a constant Zoomer, but Mary, tonight, I think it's got to be, for the sheer essence of Zoomerism, it's got to be IndyCar man.
2 in a row. 2 in a row.
Oh,
That's it. That's very good.
he's an absolute Zoomer, so I really can't argue with that.
It's impressive Zoomerism. It takes.
Quality Zoomerism.
It's just, you know, they're blocking my signal.
They're driving around and looking for his signals. Yeah.
So, and you're like,
Because it's undermining the union. You know, it's like the union's going to fall apart because of what he says in his car.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, quite.
Yes. Well, these deluded souls. Well, one of our objectives when we started the majority was to get nationalism back to a position where it was just nutters and zoomers and Anglophobes, and we seem to be getting there pretty fast at the moment anyway, so that's good news. Thank you for nominating the IndyCar guy. Right, we're so happy to have you here with us on Scotland's #1 politics chat, and please remember though that there will be no show next week. We'll be moving. We don't need your messages saying where's the show.
So tell everybody.
Tell everyone to come back in 2 weeks. Double the numbers next week. Next week after. This is a great show. You don't get this anywhere else. You have plenty of time to prepare yourself for the amazing views that come out from myself, Mary, and David. The thought for the week is a basic flaw. The basic flaw of devolution. I was thinking about this today. The basic flaw is that to think that people want an extra layer of government. That's why governments always seem to propose it. You know, it's not like the ordinary people. Ordinary people are like more politicians. Why? How did they fool people? Scott, think more politicians will make things better. When in fact, we need more teachers and entrepreneurs and police. Right? Yep. So anyway, let's put an end to this experiment at some point. A huge thank you to Councillor Thomas Kerr for coming on the show tonight. It was really great discussion. We clap, it says there. So for him. And thanks, you, Thomas. All of you, for your support and for following the show. Please do tell your friends. And we will see you again in 2 weeks. Right. So
thank you for the comments, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for all the interaction. Brilliant. See you in a couple of weeks.
Good night.
Take care.
Bye, guys.